The following episode may contain spoilers for the game Frosthaven.
Welcome to our board game podcast, A Master's Degree in Rolling Terribly, where you amDirt, I amDirt, everybody amDirt. This is episode 2, and I'm your host, Detty, and joining me is my co-host, the man who's playing a character that for some reason has 2 decks of 38 cards, 5 miniatures, and still has no clue. Gaz! Say hi, Gaz.
Hi, Gaz.
We are a board gaming podcast who's currently smashing our faces against the absolute behemoth that is Frosthaven. And we finally got a chance to get our brains warmed up with Scenario 1, which was incredibly exciting to finally taste. And now we get a chance to see all the wonderful changes that have transitioned between Gloomhaven and Frosthaven. But first of all, Gaz, can you give us an informative and detailed recap from episode 1?
Yeah, definitely. So go listen to the first episode. If you don't want to listen to that for some reason, basically what we talked about was who we are, what we're doing, and why we absolutely love Gloomhaven, and why that excitement is blossomed and exploded into us jumping headfirst into Frosthaven. A little bit about what we're expecting, what we know, which is basically nothing, and then here we are. So now today we're going to talk about our first scenario of Frosthaven, and what we thought, how we felt, and what it was all about.
Yeah. So once I finished last week's episode with you, I went and punched out Frosthaven, which took a fair amount of time. I'm pretty sure I sent you photos of me in the process of doing it and going through and sorting out all those tokens again. And having everything, I guess, ready for the four of us. The four of us being myself and Gaz, and we had my partner Calvin, and we had our other gaming friend Phil to make out our famous 4. So I had to go through and set up every one section of the board, and because we already had our characters selected, getting all of those ready and getting sleeves ready and having all that so that when Monday came, we could just get kind of straight into it. Aiding with that, though, I had to kind of open Gaz's flap and take out his cards to photograph them and actually send them to him so that he had a clue of how to play his character before Monday, because there's nothing worse than sitting there for about an hour trying to work out exactly what we were doing prior to that. So that was part of our little setup.
And I did feel very invaded, if anyone is wondering, but it was helpful. So.
Yeah, definitely, I closed the flap. It's fine.
Yeah.
So after getting everything set up, I then set up the computer. We have a computer next to the actual table that we game on, and I loaded up some music and Fortella on that to begin the opening scenario. So I kind of surprised everyone normally with Gloomhaven, I would set up the actual scenario. And if you've played Gloomhaven before, you look at the actual scenario, you see, the story, you read it out loud, and you have to actually set up the board and the map. So this time I actually had a app called Fortella. Fortella do a range of games with any kind of narration, and they do a very professional studio job with voice actors and sound effects and everything, which was brilliant. And I'll let Gaz fill you in on kind of how that went. But also I used Frosthaven Scenario Viewer, which is very similar to the original Gloomhaven Scenario Viewer, which allows the person who is setting it up to set up the scenario board with the monsters and the standees and all the obstacles and whatnot in the initial room where your characters start that particular scenario without being able to see the rest of the scenario. So even I, who was setting it up this time, had no idea how big the actual map was going to be. The various monster types that weren't shown yet, it was all a mystery to even myself. And that was brilliant. To be able to go in there knowing basically what everyone else knew was fantastic. So I had Frosthaven scenario viewer on my phone, and I had Fortella playing on my computer.
And the experience from a player, right? So I wasn't setting anything up. I was just sitting there trying to experience it and being fed amazing immersion from Detty in the game was great. And I was not expecting it all to be narrated to. I thought I've been playing the digital version, which has narration in it. And for the most part, some of it you got to read. And so I was ready to adjust back to the amazing but not professionally trained Detty to narrate the scenarios to me. And then some battle music, some immersion kicked in with the sounds. And then I had the first scenario in surround sound narrated to me in the gaming room, and definitely was not expecting it, and was also both blown away. And it's interesting because, again, my experience of late, like I spoke about this last episode, was most of it's been through the digital. Even I played the physical game quite a lot back in the day of Gloomhaven. The part of that when you're playing in digital is much like Detty was explaining with setting up the board. You can see the rooms, how many there are. So in digital, if you zoom out, you can see when you're there, you can see like the door, where it leads, what size that room is. So there is a little bit of like, oh yeah, this is a really long scenario, or I've only got one more room left. So the fact that in this one, when we were doing it, we were in one room, and we'll talk about what it looked like and the log
With one door.
with one door and the immovable log that we couldn't get past.
Oh, God.
But had no idea. It was like, oh, is this going to be a big room, a little room, 10 rooms? No idea. And I think, again, I like the experience of discovery and the unknown and not being able to plan ahead from that sense. So I love that. And I'm glad that Detty doesn't have to sit on this knowledge without telling us, like, oh, I wonder how many rooms there are. And you being like, oh, I saw the map and there's like 5, right? So you don't have to lie to us or pretend, which you're really bad at. That's
Well, it ruins that suspense. It ruins it for me as well, because the part of me is like, oh, these guys have no idea what's behind this door. It makes such a difference when I don't either. Because especially when I like to open doors. I'm more hesitant to open a door if it's a small room, it's fine. There's only 2 guys in there. And they're both ranged, so it's completely fine. No issues with that at all.
We actually had that situation where the one door that we had to go into, we got to a point where I think 2 people were long resting. 2 of us were going to go in, and it was like, all right, well, you go open the door, and I'm going to go in, and as long as it's not a really tiny room, because I'd used some ranged abilities, and I'll talk about my character a bit later, and I'm fine, and you open it up, and it's giant, and we're like, whoa, was not expecting that at all. And then you proceeded to get pummeled with arrows, so which seemed to be a theme. But yeah, that again, just being able to go or open this door and have zero idea what's going to open up is again a really cool way to experience the game, and it's great that that's unlocked through these kind of technology and app kind of options.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes such a difference. So when everyone was seated, we heard the intro from Fortella of the scenario. We understood exactly what was needed. We then had to also do a quick refresher just to make sure that we could read cards right. We understood symbology. We understood the rules so that we could jump straight into it. And due to our excitement, we definitely rushed straight into it because it was only a good, halfway through. Or was it earlier than that? I don't know. It was probably about a third of the way through. Phil turned to me and says, "Oh, we don't have battle goals." And I was like, "Oh yeah." Really embarrassing. So we had to now this is obviously a thing that we discussed last episode about Gloomhaven, right? What they changed in Frosthaven, which I was pleasantly surprised, is you actually get 3. I think Gloomhaven had 2. I'm pretty sure it had 2.
Yeah.
You get 3 battle goals.
It did.
And they're so new.
Post-production Detty here. What I meant to say was you receive 3, but you choose 1.
Yes, they are new and shiny, and that's what I was talking about. You play it enough, and you get the same ones again and again. And the ones that I saw seemed again fine. And
deck is huge. The deck of them is actually, I would say, at least 3 to 4 times bigger than the original deck. It is huge.
Well, I mean that's perfect. Basically, exactly what I was saying is that you get to the point where you are seeing the same ones again and again. And I mean, again, you're going to now when you play 100 scenarios, but at least there's that variation. And I hope that they are all achievable in a sense. But I guess having three is a really good way to mitigate that randomness because there's a good chance that you're going to get one that you think is achievable, even if you have to slightly alter your playstyle, rather than ones that you look at and go, I can't do that, I can't do that, and I can't do that. So now I guess I'm playing another scenario and not getting like a
You
tick.
can always do it. If you're a little squishy in the back and you need to open that door, you do it.
Yes, well, yeah, that there's definitely ways to alter your playstyle, but some of them just tend to be very, very tricky. So.
So it wasn't until about halfway through scenario 1 where Gaz, I think it was you, spoke across the table and said, "Oh, we haven't got our personal goals yet. You know, the ones you get when you create your character." Which was my mess up number 2 in our excitement. So very excitedly and very apologetically had to go back and deal everyone their personal goals, which technically could be, you could complete some of that in this scenario. It was very important, right? Deciding which one. And I think some people were making their decision based on the scenario we were doing.
I mean, I didn't choose mine based on that scenario. I chose mine based on the other option looked ridiculously impossible. And I was like, look, I'm looking forward to playing this character, but I don't want to play it for a year. So I'm going to choose one that seems actually achievable. Whether it is or not, we'll find out. But it did actually happen that there was an opportunity of achieving some of mine in the first mission, which was handy.
Yeah, so Gaz will retire his character by next episode, and we look forward to seeing the very first unlocked one, which will be coming through.
Not if my battle deck is anything to go by, because I had 3 opportunities to kill that idiot that I needed to, and the battle deck said no achieving your personal goal today. So
yes. So there was a little bit of relearning of the game. It was a very interesting situation to be in, where it's kind of like everyone played their 2 cards. We were all in the starting positions, and I'm playing the Drifter, which I learned is not a drifter who does drift stuff. He spoke to me a little bit more like, Gaz asked me, "What do I do?" And I said, "I'm a jack of all trades." And he just didn't seem to like that response.
So you do nothing. That's basically it.
Because I said I do a bit of everything, and I tried to show everyone from the very get-go the tanking portion of my I do everything, which was I took 2 arrows straight to the face, and basically within the first round or 2, I'd already discarded the card to mitigate some of that damage. Was
It
the
was
first
the
round?
first round. You burned a
Okay,
card.
there you go.
The second hit you took, you burned a card. I'm like, I'm not sure he remembers how to play this game. Like,
Look.
this is definitely not. It's not 3 monsters and you're done, right? Like, you need those cards.
Yeah.
Now, look, I think one of the challenges that we had, and we didn't realize this till we're in the midst of it in the first turn, and it's also one of the things I love about the Gloomhaven from Frosthaven's kind of mashup is that, or games is, I said, all right, so how tanky is everyone? Who's our tank, right? And I was like, Detty, are you our tank? You're like, oh, I'm kind of a jack of all trades, which to me meant he didn't do anything. I asked Phil, I was like, a tank? He's like, oh, no, my character description basically says I'm squishy. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's not. I know that my character has an element of that, but it really depends on which form they're in. And Calvin's character is a summoner, so I guess tank through the pets. So I was like,
so for clarification, Calvin's playing the Bone Shaper, and Phil is playing the Death Walker, I think. They sound the same. All right, they're brothers. But carry on, yes.
Yeah, and so that basically by default voted Detty in as tank, and then he proceeded to burn a card after the first turn.
Did I not tank?
Yeah, well, I mean, we can all get hit. So it's debatable, but yes, it definitely you tanked, and it was a rude awakening to the. Oh yeah, I remember how brutal this game is when the 2 archers were doing 5 damage per hit in the first turn.
That's right. And once I took that initial booking, from those two archers, I saw an opening to. I could have done one or two things. I could have stayed back and been healed up by Calvin's Bone Shaper, or healed myself because Drifter, jack of all trades, I can heal. I could have done that, and instead I went Leroy Jenkins right into the back line, out of range of everyone's heal, and proceeded to tank more against the archers and the priests that decided to come over as well. So we essentially had a very first explosive kind of moment, and everyone's getting used to Calvin summoning his wraiths and skeletons and whatnot. Phil was doing nothing except leaving puddles on the ground of shadow. I don't know. The exciting thing about all this is that we hadn't seen what each other can do, or we had a rough idea. Oh, I do this. I put shadows on the floor and I can activate them, and I don't know what that means. Like you can activate them, and Calvin's made more sense. He can summon stuff, and summons are a thing from the original Gloomhaven. So how does he interact with that? Gaz's character, from what I understood, has 15 decks, and he has to play his own game on his own. But he shapeshifts between a ranged character and a melee character, and then gets really confused and struggles a little bit there. And then you got mine, who can do everything. It just made sense that the Drifter was definitely the best. But it was very fascinating to see us run into that and work out how we were going to deal with these archers and this priest. And it felt like I was the only one doing anything at the time. And that was tanking and doing damage.
Hey, I killed the first guy.
I definitely weakened it.
I feel like the challenge, and we'll talk about the characters a little bit later, but the challenge I had was I had this massive anxiety around not just instantly dying, because there is an option that picking the wrong cards and not having the right cards to play just means that you have a good chance of just exhausting. But it definitely, and we'll talk about a couple of the big turns later, and the experience of that definitely felt like Phil was ramping. Oh, I need shadows. I need to be ramping. I need shadows. I need to be ramping. We heard that a lot.
That's what he said.
He
said that a lot.
Though. It did pay off. There was some
when it
big
happens.
turns.
It happened. Holy crap!
Yeah,
he absolutely destroyed.
Yeah.
So in that very first room in scenario 1, there was another mishap. Do you remember what that one was?
I believe that there was a log that was
a giant
placed.
2-tile log, correct? Yep. It's in the middle of the corridor.
Yep. And it was explained to us that was an obstacle. Now, for those,
I don't know if I said it was an obstacle. Someone may have asked, and I may have been distracted and just agreed with whatever someone was saying.
So when we said, is that an obstacle? And you said yes, we took it to be an obstacle. And we played that entire first room as that an obstacle. Now, we won't describe the room, but basically that creates a choke point of one block that you have to run around. And it made it very tough to move through, get around, stop archers shooting. It made the whole thing a pain.
It was a tower defense.
And then it wasn't until just as we'd all cleared the log, I believe, through jumps, through moving, through killing the monster that was standing in the way, that we realised that it was actually difficult terrain.
It was difficult terrain, yeah.
So we could have moved through it. It cost one extra move, but whoop-de-doo, would have been a hell of a lot easier. And we went through that. But it's funny because as much as like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. Those are some of the experiences that you have in the playing the board game with friends, people that you can laugh that stuff off, and actually in real life where that never happens in the digital. Like the game doesn't suddenly forget that a tile can be moved through or can't be moved through, right? So it really, for me, that's the stuff we can look back on and have a laugh of. And I have a feeling, because this is the kind of person I am, this is a group we are, that we're going to carry this joke on through every single campaign. And I believe that the immovable log will just become a common theme, which is great. This is what you want, right?
Well, there's going to be more, little tiny mishaps along the way, and we can collect them all. But I do want to say, we didn't break the rules. We just made it harder.
That's correct, actually. We did it wrong in the game.
For our detriment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's very true. It's a good point. So
that's right. So once we finally, I probably had discarded a good 4 or 5 cards by now. We were ready to progress from the first room. A couple of us decided to take their long rest. Again, need to reiterate, I had no idea what was behind the door and how large, despite setting up the game. And I decided to open the door because I'm the tank. And I opened up the door, and it was two of the larger tiles out of all the tiles that you can actually choose in the game. It was two of the larger tiles, but joined together. And there was a room full of, I think they're Algox, they're mutated Inox, or they're the cousins or something, but they're obviously bigger and badder and worse. And it was full of archers, big brutes, which had 12 health each, I believe, and a couple of priests who were healing. But also, and I forgot to mention, in the very first room, we actually had the actual, because this is Frosthaven and it's under attack, and we're coming in to kind of save it and see what's going on. There's like town guards, city guards that are in there, and they're purely there as NPCs. And they don't actually activate, they're just there to be targets, with a shield of 2 and a retaliation of 2. And they were pretty much spread out. So when you look at this room and you open this door, it looks like an absolute mess because there are so many units everywhere. And the first thing I thought of was, I've effed up.
And those guards, it was great because they thematically showed why Frosthaven needed saving because they were useless, right? In the one that was in the starter room, literally stood there and did not interact with the game at all because they don't, right? They don't have cards. That's the purpose. But it definitely showed why we needed to rock up and save it because other than standing still and being punched, they don't actually have any capacity to guard.
He took up a spot in that narrow corridor.
That's true. Actually, yes. Combined with that immovable log, it actually did impact the game. So
that's right. So we went in there and Gaz and I, yeah, it was you and I. We were in there first, and we were divvying up. Gaz decided to do a bit of tanking. Now, he said this, I can take a hit. Gaz also proceeded to receive the first null card from the monster deck, which really upset me because I'm constantly getting hit after hit after hit. And then when Gaz decides, don't worry, Detty, I'll take this one, of course, it rolls a miss. And it was just one of those collective cheer/groan moments at the table, the groan coming from me, that it's one of the things that annoy me is I needed it to hit him. I needed it to hit him. I needed him to feel what I've been feeling, putting my neck out on the line for this group, and he didn't even get to do that properly. Already, from that moment, he had tanked better than I had.
And I mean, this is what I mean. Jack of all trades, which meant you can't do anything. So
No.
I still stick with that. But yeah, we did. We jumped into that room. I think that was the plan. We had Calvin and Phil, who were both long resting, so they were going to come and bring up the rear. And it was a lot, right? Because we had these two big tanky monsters in front of us.
Yeah, elites as well.
Yeah, that's true, actually. They were. So there was no chance we were burning them down. In actual fact, my battle goal was to not kill an elite, so I had even less reason to attack them. So I was looking and going like, oh, I could do a bunch of damage to them, or I could not. There were some archers that were going to definitely pepper us. And actually, after that, the next turn, I had a classic Gloomhaven moment where I looked at my cards that I could choose. I looked at the board state where it was at, and I went, you know what? I got a plan, and this is going to go really well. Right? We had these two big brutes right there that were going to pummel us. I was going to do this weird area of effect attack. It was going to immobilize both of them, and then I was going to jump away, not get shot by the archers, and it was a perfect plan. And then the monster deck flipped over cards, and for some reason, these giant, slow, sluggish brutes went at like a 12 and moved forward, and then the archers also went at like a 14. And immobilized me. So not only did I have the two brutes right up in my grill, I then couldn't move or hit any of them. I was like, yeah, that's why I love this game, because it never lets you do what you want.
Do you remember when we used to play Gloomhaven and we'd come across the shadow spirits, like the dark ones or the light ones, and you kind of get used to the monster, you kind of get used to the type, oh, these are the ones that have a lot of shields but really low health. well, these are the ones that play with the dark element. You kind of get familiar with that. This was not like that at all because we had absolutely no archers shooting. Yeah, they had the trap ability, but what else do they have? What are their initiatives? We don't know because we hadn't been playing it. These are things that you get after playing multiple games. So it's kind of scary because you don't know what they're going to do. You don't know how fast they're going to come at you. You don't know how hard you can see their base damage, but you don't know what tricks they have up their sleeve. So that whole element of discovery was just at its full throbbing, everything at that moment when we entered that room.
And I think it came out a little bit later when, because there was a couple of the priests, because we had one of them in the first room, and literally all it did was just move around healing, right? And because we killed all the other monsters, it was basically not doing anything. And we jumped into the other room, killed a few of the monsters. Spoilers, we moved into the room and started killing stuff. And then the priest suddenly started drawing all these attack cards. We're like, whoa, 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 hang on, attacks? What are you talking about? So
You don't do that.
it is again really it is that interesting moment because you can kind of make your assessments based on tropes and whatnot about what they're going to do, but yeah, you've got the initiatives, you've got the types of attacks, and all those different things that really are going to kind of keep us guessing, and I'm really looking forward to that because
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine there's going to be a score of monsters, and it's going to be like just kind of really cool to see all of those in action.
Exactly. And when you throw in scenario modifiers and scenario effects and things like that, that can even alter those even further, it just, it's no two scenarios will really feel the same. And even though scenario one is effectively kill everything, it's never any less exciting, than every other one that comes up. Like they all have very, very interesting. If it's a kill everything one, the monster types are very interesting. Or the combinations that they put at you, or the room setup, or the obstacles. It's always keeping it very fresh, puzzly, but in a really refreshing and rewarding way.
Yeah, and I think from like experience with Gloomhaven and some of the missions that aren't kill everything, like I like that there's variety, but some of them get to be a little bit more like a puzzle, more too much like a puzzle and less like a dungeon crawler. Because I mean, you're already playing a puzzle with your cards and the hexes and the monsters and figuring all that out. And when it becomes a stand on this, go over here, collect this thing, it tends to be a bit like, oh, you mean we don't have to kill anything? We can just like jump over monsters and loot the chest and then push this button, then we win. And it can, and playing some, I know there's been some of those scenarios I felt has kind of detracted a little bit because of that. So it's interesting. I'm not saying everything has to be killer monsters because I do like the variety, and I did actually quite like the fact that this was killer monsters, but with some guards and a little bit extra flavor. So I'm just hoping that there is that just slight different flavor on every scenario, which we kind of saw a lot of in Gloomhaven.
Yeah. And when, like you said, with the guards, right? When we first entered that room and we saw all of the mobs, and we're using, we're inputting it into the app that we were using, which I'll mention a little bit later, and working out which stand was belonging to what, it gave you a real picture of, holy crap, there are so many guys in this room. How are we going to be able to clear all this with the amount of cards that we have, provided we're actually hitting and getting positive numbers? But then we actually saw the first interaction of some of the brutes that were down the end of the room, and they were focusing on the guards. And the guards actually have retaliation 2. So while they're wailing on the guards, and the guards have a shield value of 2, the guards are actually quite tanky and they're staying alive, whilst also doing a retaliate damage back to the brutes. And when I noticed that, and we were then, it all kind of, the light bulb moment went off. We were like, oh, this isn't as bad. It's still bad, but it's not as bad. We don't have to deal with all of them because these ones aren't focusing on us. These ones are basically slowly killing themselves on the guards, and the guards are actually proving to be quite useful there until the priests started to get their sort of heal thing on, and then we had to really book it into the room. Now, we mentioned Phil with his Deathwalker. We entered the room, we had the 2 elites that Gaz and I were trying to navigate around and deal with the archers. Phil played a bunch of cards and did nothing, and then played a bunch of cards and did nothing. Meanwhile, there's little black puddles, and they're all over the floor in different areas. And then he played a card that said something along the lines of, for every puddle you've left on the floor, pick it up and do a bazillion damage to this target. And he proceeded to, from 12 health to 0, on Scenario 1 as level 1 characters, completely destroy one of the elites, and have enough of his action to to do 4 damage on the other one, which kind of got a round of applause from all of us because we're like, oh, we get it now. You are it's a tempo thing. It's a slow burn kind of thing, and I did find that really interesting. It's nice to have the guy with the sniper rifle in the back who can do stuff like that. So that was very, very, very fun. It wasn't until later on also he discovered that he could teleport, which would have been really, really handy. How did you find your class, the Geminate?
Yeah, so look, I was really excited going into this because I do like picking things that are a little bit different. I like little puzzles. Also like kind of like the weird kind of characters. Again, I chose this purely based on the name and like the picture, having absolutely no idea how the class played.
We also just to jump in here, when we looked at the actual classes, we then saw that there was a complexity rating. You actually picked the most complex class, which is kind of typical of you in a lot of games. You go straight for the complexity.
Yeah.
You like a challenge.
It's always been something. I've always played video games on the hardest difficulty. I've stopped doing that because I never finished them. Back when I had unlimited free time and no responsibilities, it was a thing. But I feel like I didn't pick this seeing the complexity rating. I picked it and I went, that sounds good. And then when I was like, let's familiarize myself with how the card works before we start, I did see that. And I mean, in a nutshell, the thing that makes it complex is that unlike every other or class so far in Gloomhaven and what we've seen in Frosthaven, you have a deck of or a hand of cards. So let's just say you might have 12 cards in your hand, and then each turn you play 2. The Geminate actually has 14 cards, and within that, 7 of them are for melee form and 7 of them are for the range form. And what you need to do is on some of their cards, they have this little symbol which forces you to switch between forms, and you can only play cards that match the form you're in. So you can find yourself in a position where you're like, oh, I'm in a really good position to do this great melee attack, but I'm in range 4. And you only ever switch at the end of the turn. So you don't have that option of just being like, I'll just quickly switch first and then go. So it does require a bit of planning. And so I started looking at my cards going like, I not only do I not have any idea what these cards do, but I don't know what form I'm supposed to be in. So it was kind of a little bit of figuring it out as it went. But it was good fun because some of them are a bit different. I think after playing one campaign or scenario now, I've got a much better idea how to probably maximize and leverage some of the cards and do a little bit probably better than I did. But definitely also the sequencing is going to be one of those things that I'm going to have to play around with because you kind of need to. One of the things to make it more effective is to look a turn ahead and try and figure out what you're going to do, which you normally would in Gloomhaven a little bit. But I need to also work out, make sure that a card I play is going to make sure that I'm in the right form. So I did so far really enjoyed it, and I've actually been painting the miniatures, which is kind of getting me into the theme a little bit more as well. So that's been cool, and I'm really looking forward to our next session and playing again. Again, because I love that mastery kind of component to games like this, where you go, all right, I've got a little bit of experience now. I know how to do something different. So not only am I discovering things in the game, and the game's throwing you like scenarios at me, but I'm actually still just getting better at what I've been given.
Yeah, with several times throughout the actual session, you turned to us and said, would you be okay with getting muddled or, I don't know, entangled or something along those lines? Care to explain exactly what that's all about, and is that actually a thing? There's no PvP in this.
I did threaten that quite a lot. So one of the kind of features or kind of elements of the Geminate is that it can debuff itself and allies. So it has some of quite large, especially for level 1, area of effect abilities. And on a few of those, it has also affects allies, or not so much for the actual attack, but all allies in the red squares will be muddled, for example. So I feel like there was at one stage a chance that I could have put a wound on 4 enemies, but simultaneously also would have put a wound on our entire party. So I feel like, for efficiency, it would have been quite good. But I decided to opt out. So I'm
Are you enjoying having a character that kind of breaks the game rules a little bit? No one else is playing like this. We're all playing the game as it feels. And there you are with your 2 special decks and your 2 forms and your friendly fire.
I think so. Like last time when we were talking about what we were looking forward to, and I guess one of the things we really liked about Gloomhaven, I spoke about having options. Like I love the fact that you have so many decisions to make because you got your whole hand of cards, and I've essentially starting each scenario with 14 cards. You get to pick which form you start in, so I kind of could do whatever I want on the first turn. I'm really looking forward to playing with that and seeing again what some of the higher level cards come up with, and how they scale, and kind of what cool combos and synergy I can find between some of the cards. So yeah, I definitely so far after one scenario can say I'm looking forward to playing it again, and I've enjoyed it so far. What about your jack of all trades, but not good at anything?
Oh, well, what did you think about it?
I think you did a great job of tanking. I mean, I think you were exhausted by the end, right?
I was the only one that exhausted, which here's a little tidbit. When we were picking our battle goals at the very start, I picked one that said you'll finish the scenario with your health at its max amount, which definitely did not happen. That was a real oversight. I just, for some reason, thought I was going to tank and heal my way through it, and I was going to finish it going, yeah, what up? Did not happen.
I will say though that again, I've been playing a fair amount of Gloomhaven digitally, so I kind of feel like I've been playing it for a while. We were getting hammered, like we were getting hit really hard, and I felt like for a level 1 scenario, monsters drawing like 4s and 5s, with it before the modifier deck, I think was just brutal. I think we maybe did cop some bad combos of someone having like a 3 or a 4 and then getting a +2. So just getting like a one stage Phil who had not been hit at all, got hit for 6 and killed him. And so he
He's
had to
got
burn
6
a card.
health.
Yeah. So he's like the first time he got attacked, he just got hit for all his health because it was like a 4 with a +2. But or a 3, I think we got crit a few times as well. So I feel like we got, I won't say unlucky because I think that it all plays out. But there was probably some combinations of attacks and modifier cards that jumped out to be like, whoa, that's a big hit for a level 1 character.
To me, the Drifter doesn't feel like anything else I've actually played. It literally does have a little bit of everything because it does have quite a few healing cards. It's got a few different attack cards. It's got some ranged cards. It's got some AoE cards that do damage. It's got some cards that apply status effects like wound and poison. But the main shtick with the Drifter is it plays a lot with persistent cards, where you place the card in front of you in your active area, place a token on it, and every time you meet a certain requirement on that card, you move it along. So this is its main way of A, getting XP, and B, building up strength. And these persistent cards, there's something like 6 of them in the whole deck. One of them is every time you attack, you get +2. Another one is every time you move an extra +2. Another one is every time you heal +2. So, and there's another one for ranged. So, and another one for shield, right? So it's a little bit of everything. It's deciding which ones to get out. And if you do put one out, a lot of the times, a lot of them on the top section of a card, by placing it out, you're not attacking. So you're spending a turn in prep. It's your own kind of prep. Now, the other thing with the Drifter is a lot of the cards also have a wording on it that says once you've done A, like A section of the card, take one of your tokens or one of your persistent cards and move it backwards. So I'm kind of playing DJ Hero over here and moving tokens back and forth between my cards. That's the idea. Did I do that? I did not. I went in as vanilla as anything, knowing that I had to get these persistent cards out, but never really saw an opportunity where I would forego an attack opportunity to prep because I was always at the front because I was tanking. So I was always using a bottom card to do some kind of move action and a top card to do some kind of an attack. I think this is a learning experience for me in understanding the tempo and setup of the Drifter to become more effective. The more of these cards that I can get out, I reckon the more effective I'll be. But with that comes patience. I probably need to spend a little bit more time at the start, not going full gung ho, maybe letting some of the ranged guys deal with some of the monsters before I do, and I think that will make a bit of a difference.
Yeah, definitely. I think that losing cards early also hurts that because once you
Definitely.
start losing cards, it becomes an even bigger cost to play a persistent card because now you burn a card, play a persistent card, and suddenly by turn 2 you have burnt for lack of essentially 2 or 3 cards,
Mm,
and your 9 card hand that you started with is now 6. It's sort of like, well, hang on, guys, we got to finish this scenario soon, and it's like turn 2. So, yeah, it's definitely a balance.
well, the masteries that come on the character sheets where you can get perks. One of mine is to have 4 persistent cards out and have the token on the last space.
for each
But
of them.
of at least 4 cards.
Wow.
Right? I can have 5 of them out, but obviously when you put one out, that's one less card in your deck. It's one that's out. So I have to finish a scenario with the token on the end spot of 4 persistent cards. And I'm just like, how? Like, I got one out in that scenario. I got
Yeah.
one out. I was just like, how? Obviously, it's a later thing. When I don't know, it might become easier.
Yeah, I think that, and assuming that Frosthaven follows the same path, but it does get the game not easier, but you have more options as you level up more because you're not getting one shot, right? You've got some more powerful cards that allow you to do that. So you putting out 4 persistent cards is less of a cost when you've got some other cards backing it up and we can do more.
Yeah.
Right, but at level 1, that's tricky because you're not doing much. Like you're spending most of your bottoms are just moving, right? Most people don't have anything useful to do, and so it kind of ends up being this like, well, if I'm going to burn 4 cards on just persistent abilities, I'm basically like that's half my deck gone there. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how it develops. And I mean, like one of my masteries is discard burn a card every turn.
Wait, for the whole scenario?
Yeah, for the whole scenario.
Oh, yuck.
So yeah, exactly. But one of the and I need to clarify the rule on it, but one of the perks I can get is that whenever I burn a card, I can return a card from my discard pile into my hand. So I think there's probably a combo with that of once you get that piece that you can, while you're burning cards still, you can refresh your deck a bit. So you're not gonna just go, I'm out of cards, I've got to rest and now I'm exhausted. But I mean, if when I decide to do that one, I'm gonna have to pick the right scenario because if it's really long, right, then I'm gonna get halfway through and go, oh, abort, no, we don't want to do it this time. But half my deck's gonna be burnt, so it's gonna be interesting.
No, have fun with that. I don't want part of it.
Well, you guys are gonna have to deal with the consequences, so you can have fun with it too.
It's just rubbish because your character literally can mess us up and we can't mess yours. So they kept all the rules regarding loot. There's a loot deck now, which is really cool. I actually really, really like it. In the past, you have all the token coins and you just litter them all over the floor, and everyone just sees shiny coins, coins, coins. Now, every scenario, they actually have a bunch of symbols relating to different things like timber, or lumber. Well, you know what? We're going to go with lumber. I think it's lumber. And metal and some herbs and flowers and things like that. So it's going to be a deck that gets made up of types of cards, not exact ones of flowers, but a symbol essentially. And you form a deck, I think it's 20, and you put one random loot card in there and it gets shuffled up. And then whenever you go over a loot token now, because now there's loot tokens all over the map, Whenever you go over one, you draw the top card from there. And what this changes is the rule in the past game in Gloomhaven where you had oozes. Oozes are the best example because they have a card that allows them to multiply. They take 2 damage and they spawn a duplicate copy of the ooze, which from a manual, no app driven point of the game, we had to even put a coin under the ones that were going to drop a coin when they died versus the summoned ones, because summoned creatures don't drop coins. And that was a nightmare. Now they fixed it. So everything drops loot. Anything you kill, it'll drop loot. And now the only thing you're restrained by is the loot deck. So you can pretty much loot to your heart content, but once that loot deck is empty, you can't loot anymore. So I do like that change.
I also like that change. I like that the things that are dropping now just aren't coins. Like, I think that's cool. We didn't actually go through the outpost phase, which I am only learning about because I didn't look into this game at all prior to. I just got excited and jumped in the deep end. So I'm really looking forward to a next session where we go through that phase and see what we can spend all these lumber and flowers and sticks and stuff on, because I'm sure that's how you rebuild a city, right? With sticks and flowers.
That's right.
But one of the things I will say, and this is only because we talked about it last time with how people house rule the loot system, I don't think that has made that scenario better. In fact, I think that's made it worse. Now, I don't think this will, in fact, affect our group because I don't think we're concerned about this. But now the fact that all of the things that are dropped are random, it means that the chest for the scenario is now random. People are going to be even more analysis paralysis in, okay, we've got 2 monsters left. How many turns can we eke out? Can we actually loot all the tokens? We've got to go through that. So I love the system. I think it's really cool, and I love the fact that it's loot tokens instead of coins. But I reckon for the people that were really dark on, oh, we should just get everything at the end of the scenario anyway, I reckon they're probably going to have a meltdown.
Yeah.
Which is fine because I love watching people have meltdowns on the internet.
Same.
And I think that it's a cool idea, but that's just as a, I guess, devil's avocado type of view on it.
Yeah, they did mention in the rule book when it came to looting the chest at the end, if you've got a serial looter who is the one that goes for that chest, if they get a duplicate item, which speaks to me that there might be fairly, I don't know what they consider duplicate, if it's exactly the same or something else, you can immediately trade that to another player. I don't know how much that's going to make it different, but it's something they have thought about to a level.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that makes sense. I guess, I think I'm not even sure if you could get items like equipment in loot. I know you could get them in treasure chests, but they're usually different ones. But I guess that just means if someone gets a second pair of boots, right, instead of them having to vendor them and then someone else buy them, they can just actually give them to them, which is good. It's a small quality of life change that would be good. One of the things that I don't know whether I'd like to see or not. Again, this comes into that whole, do you want to change stuff or you don't want to change stuff? And I wouldn't suggest it. It's just when a chest does get looted and the item does get picked up, that it can just go into party loot just for the items, because otherwise you can get weird situations where it's random. The non-summoner gets the summoner like weapon, and then they have to sell it and the other person has to buy it back. Does it really make a difference? Probably not.
It's hard to say because you're completely right, but we haven't seen the items yet. They may not be as niche now, but useful in other ways. We won't really know until we're 20 scenarios deep and we're like, I've got all these items because I looted that are just completely wrong for me.
Yeah.
They may have thought about that. It's just we can't. We know that from Gloomhaven.
That's a really good point. Like, I'm completely looking at it in a Gloomhaven lens, and I'm not saying it's a problem at all. It's just, again, sounds like a nice little quality of life thing to say. Hey, if you get something you've already got, you can just give it to someone else. I think that's cool. So, but I am really looking forward to, because from what I understand is that the item space in Frosthaven, the actual city Frosthaven, is more of a crafting system than it is just a merchant.
Yes.
I mean, like, I think in the scenario I got 1 coin, right, which turned into 2 based on the multiplier of it. I mean, that's no coins, but I'm assuming that now I can pretty much buy Gloomhaven with how little money they have. So when we next return, I will be the king of Gloomhaven of
That's right.
Frosthaven. So
No, that's 100% right. The last character we had running around was actually the Bone Shaper, and Calvin played that really well. Now, what I did learn about the Bone Shaper was their lowest initiative is 76. They are a slow class, but they have the added benefit of being able to summon an army, kind of like a necromancer, kind of like a bone dancer from the Daok throwback. And no, it was actually really cool. Calvin did a really interesting job of launching with a Wraith at the beginning with 1 health, and it had a ranged attack, and this thing never hit anything less than 2. For some reason, it was nuking everything really high, which was really disappointing that it was out DPSing me. And that was just one of his summons. And then he had a little skeleton, which, look, they all kind of got trapped in that corridor with Barry the guard and the impassable log. And yeah, he kind of got left behind in that first room and didn't quite make it into that second room. But from what I saw with the manipulation of making his summoned units move and attack from and things like that, yeah, I haven't seen too much, but I'm looking forward to seeing a bit more about what that Bone Shaper can do.
do you remember though that when we were considering that we were going to fail the scenario because we couldn't kill that one last guy, we were looking at pinning our final hopes on that skeleton to slowly move across that room and be the one to kill it. So while it was slow and it didn't really have an impact on that second room, there was a stage there where we thought it was going to be our only hope.
Yes, and look, brings me to my next point. You said exactly what I want to go into now. There was one creature left, and we were all getting a bit low on cards, and we were trying to work out how we were going to finish off the scenario. We kind of had worked out that we had won. Didn't always look that way, but once we sort of worked it out, we had enough card economy, we were going to win. And I was going in for the final blow, and I was told not to. My good friend Gaz told me not to hit it for some unknown reason, and I should go and loot something instead. Now, back to earlier when you said now was I the one that exhausted, you technically made me exhaust because I would have killed that and not exhausted. But instead I spent my move to go and do something else and loot, which provided you killed it on that turn, we would have ended the scenario and it would have been fine. Now, what actually happened?
I missed.
You did. That's right. And everyone else was way back in the earlier portion of the room, then realizing, oh, we have another round to go. So everyone then started to run towards, this last monster who had basically no health left. And I'm pretty sure we let you go again. And then what happened?
I drew a -2. So the game.
I believe we went for another round.
No,
I had exhausted him this time.
I think Phil had an attack lined up, and he has the initiative boot, so he could have jumped me in initiative. But I was like, look, I like, for reasons I'm not going to go into, I really would like to kill this specific type of monster that is here. Like, it would be really good. My character feels a strong urge to that one guy needs to be killed. And so he did not use his initiative boots to troll me and gave me a chance to kill it after Detty had given me the same chance the turn before, and I had missed. And then I did draw a -2. So instead of doing the 4 damage I needed to do it, which I would have if I drew a 0, I did 2 damage, and then Phil killed it, and we did finish the mission. But yes, it was a long drawn out experience in why nothing ever goes to plan in Gloomhaven, and now I know that's true also in Frosthaven.
Yes, and now if you hold my hand up and say, "Hey, don't kill it," I'm going to ignore you and actually kill it.
Yeah, I mean, look, probably it was a bit greedy of me, or bold, to want to try to tick off one of the monsters I need to kill for my own personal retirement goal in the very first scenario. But hey, like, it's all about push your luck, right?
Mm-hmm. So did you have fun?
I loved it. I've other than our original Gloomhaven playthrough, which we talked about was several years ago, I've been playing Gloomhaven and digital for 6 months, maybe 4 months, once a week, and it's been good. Like it's been really cool to see some of the scenarios I missed, play catch characters I've missed. So really, I just love the system. Even though I've been playing that pretty consistently that time, this absolutely floored me with like the experience. Playing face to face, I always love like just the laughs, the as you said, the groans and the cheers as things come up. I think is great. But the fact everything is new, like it feels like you're going into something that you know really well, but everything is fresh and new, and I just love that. I love the fact that I don't have to learn the rules of a game because I know the rules. That obviously some slight changes, but for the most part, it's the same game. But everything's new.
Yeah, it's the mechanics and the system we love with the freshest, newest, shiniest coat of paint on it, with all of these new accessories and toys. It's just they kept the core of what makes the game a Haven game, and just ran with it. They didn't make it a half-baked sequel with more of the same.
Yeah, 100%. Like there's absolutely no way that they just put heaps of effort into the first scenario, so you think it would be cool, and then the rest of it's garbage, right? Like the fact
Yeah.
that this is how it is, and um, it just makes me believe this whole thing's going to be amazing, right? Like there's no doubt in my mind that this is going to be as good of an experience as it was playing through Gloomhaven the first time. Just simply because the effort and time they will have put into making sure that it is.
Yeah, and we've got a good group. We've got a good group going. We've got a good routine happening. We've basically, when we wrapped up that particular game, unfortunately, it was too late. We did not get to see our first outpost phase. That's something that we will start the next session on Monday doing. I'm still not 100% sure how that's supposed to go, but we're going to learn and go through that together. We've also opened up the option for scenario 2 and also scenario 3. We haven't made a decision or even come close to even discussing which direction we're going to go in. But again, I'm looking forward to that. We haven't done any of the road events or of any of the city events, so I have no idea what they look like. Apparently, they've tweaked a lot of those with things like class symbols and all sorts of stuff. I'm not too sure. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next session and seeing more of Frosthaven and what it's giving to us. But so far, extremely impressed. Regarding the setup, so like I said earlier, we did use Fortella for. The Fortella also played anytime you trigger a portion, like a section in the actual game, open this door and then read this section. I actually had the app ready to go so that it actually read every portion of it, which was just brilliant. So I highly recommend it. It is a paid feature, but you can unlock all of Frosthaven for a certain amount. It is in USD. I can't remember how much it is. I think it might be something around the 15, 17 mark. Frosthaven Scenario Viewer, which is what I'll always be using from now on to set up the scenarios. That is free. I'm currently using that on the Play Store on my Android phone. Detty here. Apologies. This is not a free app. It's actually $4.99 USD in the Play Store. Gloomhaven Secretary we have running on a computer, and it's on a big screen at the moment that we can all see on a monitor. What is good about Gloomhaven Secretary is it manages all of the monster movement, monster card activation. It tracks all of the initiatives. It tracks all of the status effects. It literally can track the campaign if you wanted to do that. It tracks all of the elements. It's really good. It's really clear. And another cool feature is that everyone can actually use their own individual device if they want to sync to it to input their own initiatives or their own health reduction or their own XP gain because it tracks everything. So therefore, everyone doesn't need the one person to do it all. They can all chip in and do all that. And it kind of syncs all up, which is really handy. That is also free. We have Gloomhaven Monster Move, and this is not something I have used yet, but there have been a couple of times in the original Gloomhaven where I wasn't too sure whether or not we had line of sight, or if a monster with a certain initiative and certain action card came up that said it moves over here, but it targets 3 people in this exact situation, I can actually put that scenario into this program with our positions and our initiatives, and it will tell me exactly who it's going to go for, which I haven't used yet, but it's really, really handy for those moments where we just are not too sure what a monster's going to do. And finally, while we're playing the whole game on Spotify, you can actually find someone, I'm not too sure who, I can't remember, it'll be there, but someone has put together a really, really cool Gloomhaven playlist. I don't know, so that we can have that as background music during the game. I don't know where they got it from. It looks official. It could be from the digital game, but I haven't played that, so I don't really know.
It definitely, I think I mentioned this earlier. It made it feel a lot cooler having the narration and jokes aside, like just having that to be removed away from a person. So normally that would be Detty kind of managing that and playing the semi GM in that sense. It was cool being able to him just sit down and experience it. But also having some music going, I highly recommend that if you have the opportunity. Setting it up so that you've kind of got a really cool play space with your group, because it just creates a lot more immersion in what looks like they put a lot of effort into in the Frosthaven kind of world, which is the expanded Gloomhaven universe.
Very high production. So that about wraps up episode 2 and scenario 1 of Frosthaven. Join us next week when we go into either scenario 2 or 3, experience our first outpost phase, and discuss not only the next scenario we do, but any new things that we've learned, new enemy types, and things like that. We'll be covering all of that in the next episode, which I'm looking forward to playing it first, but I'm also looking forward to discussing it with Gaz afterwards.
And I'm looking forward to seeing how much your tanking ability improves.
I will show you what a jack of all trades can really do. So, yeah, thanks for joining us on episode 2 of A Master's Degree in Rolling Terribly.
Yeah, and don't forget, the secret to rolling terribly is all in the wrist.